A very happy President's Day to you from Mr. Jefferson's University. Virginia welcomes in East Carolina for the women's lacrosse home opener on the ACC network. As you can see, the Wahoos not yet fully home. The match moved from Klockner because of field conditions to the lower turf practice field, but just about ready to tangle with East Carolina nonetheless. After an 11-month layoff, here we go. Julie Meyer's team just happy to be playing. Welcome on grounds and welcome to lower turf practice field here in Charlottesville alongside Dana Boyle, Jason Patterson here. And Dana, it's been a long time since we've seen this women's lacrosse right around the corner.
It has. I think Julie Meyer's team, speaking to her earlier, is just excited to put on that Virginia jersey. After a long-awaited season, it is finally here, finishing the 2020 season at 5-3. Julie just expressed how excited her team was to not be playing themselves anymore. They're back on the lower turf, ready to go.
On the flip side, 2 in 4 days for this East Carolina squad, and they look like they're making it pay off right away. You talk about being excited to be back, and we get initial action out of the gate as Virginia is on the board. It takes very little time to get started, and the Wahoos find themselves out to a 1-0 lead. That's the start you want when you've had a long layoff.
Exactly. I think Julie Myers wants to attack early. Great shot by Annie Dyson, someone who struggled with some injuries last year. First year at UVA, tore her ACL. It's great to see her back on the field, getting that first score for Virginia.
And the first goal of the year comes from Annie Dyson, so that's how everything gets rolling. I was going to mention East Carolina just a moment there. The Pirates have a couple of games in 4 days, one under their belt. We'll see how well that serves them along the way.
ECU looked really good against that Furman team. They came out with a really strong first half, held Furman scoreless for almost 18 minutes in that first half, but kind of the wheels fell off in the second half, so I'm sure Coach Moore wants them to play a complete half, especially complete game against a team like Virginia.
And Amanda Moore's team, a 16-14 winner in that contest on Friday at Johnson Stadium. It was a cold, rainy afternoon, so they've got a little bit of a warm-up in this kind of weather, because that's exactly what it is here. As we have the second draw control, it will be controlled by Virginia. Yeah, you think in terms of the weather situation in this one here today. Temperatures in the high 30s at the time of the start, 37 degrees. Knew there was a chance of rain today. It's only supposed to get worse as it goes along. But you told me, partner, at the start that this is the kind of weather you love playing in when this is your job.
People say lacrosse is a spring sport, but I tend to shy away from that when you get weather like this in February. But I think, you know, both teams just happy to be here with the season cut so short last year.
The inability to play at Klockner, but fortunately there is a lower turf practice facility just like this, and a credit to everybody surrounding both programs that we're simply playing lacrosse today. And here's Virginia again putting together an attack after building that 1-0 lead early, but all lanes closed off for the moment by that East Carolina defense. You were keeping an eye on the East Carolina defense coming into this one. They're led by Liz Blumenthal, among others. It is the strength of their team.
I was impressed with ECU's defensive pressure against Furman, I think, especially when you're playing a team like Virginia with that high energy, the ability to move the ball. You got to mark your girls. Great shot, Lily Cloak.
Cloak the second to score for Virginia. A couple of quick ones for the Wahoos as they take advantage of this situation.
Another Virginia player that I've been impressed with over the years. Appeared in all of the games since she was a freshman. She had a goal in almost every game last year. I think she's going to be one of those veteran leaders for Virginia and someone that some of the younger freshmen look to kind of lead the charge on the offensive front.
Well, let's talk veteran leadership just a little bit. Both of these teams with 14 seniors, and in the case of Virginia, 4th years or beyond back. But this Virginia squad, I mean, it is loaded. You even got a 6th year on this squad when you take a look at the way things have shaken out.
They do. I think their veteran leadership is going to come in key. I talked to Julie Myers earlier, and she talked about, you know, the veteran leadership can somewhat be deceiving because they all lost that season last year, only having played 8 games. So I think, you know, you got to look to your younger players to challenge your older players, and your older players to kind of really hone in on what it is Virginia wants to do for the rest of the season. So
after Lily Cloak cashes in on the free position shot, Virginia out to a 2-0 advantage. The ground ball scooped up by the Wahoos once again here, as that is Mackenzie Hogue. She's one of the young freshmen that they are very high on here on grounds.
Mackenzie Hogue from New York. She's got a sister that also plays on the Virginia team, and then a sister that plays at UNC. She's a star, Katie Hogue. I'm sure many people watching know the name. Someone who Julie Myers was really impressed with. The freshman starting is impressive, to say the least.
A couple of those worth keeping an eye on. Morgan Schwab alongside of Hogue two they're very pleased with. And here's Virginia cashing in again. There she is on cue. Mackenzie Hogue able to find the back of the net. It's 3-0 UVA.
Another great free position. I think, especially as a freshman, getting on the 8-meter free position, that's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking, but she looks like a pro. She looks like she's done it before. It's a great shot, great placement off the stick side of the goalie.
All right, you've been there. When you are introducing yourself to a program as strong, as solid as Virginia, when you're under the tutelage of a coach as storied as Julie Myers, how do you handle those nerves as a first year on grounds?
Julie does a great job of really corralling her team. You know, she's a great leader. She's been on grounds. She's her 26th season at Virginia. She does a good job of kind of, you know, big picture, you know, this is lacrosse, but there is so much more to lacrosse. You know, it's just a game. You've been playing it since you were young. You know, do the little things right. She always says sweep the corners. That's her big claim to fame.
NCAA tournament appearance every year under the dean of UVA coaches. And when you've been doing it for more than a quarter century, it is impressive that you continue to make the NCAA tournament year in and year out. It may be her job a little tougher right now, Dana, than it's ever been because of the off-the-field challenges from a coaching standpoint this unusual season.
I would agree, and I think, you know, teams are getting better, not just in the ACC, but, you know, across conferences. And you look at a team like ECU, you know, when I was playing for Virginia, they didn't have a women's team, and so you've got them under the leadership of Coach Moore. She played at UNC. She's got some really great assistants under her belt, and it's just helping grow the game that you have a team like ECU that can come and play a team like Virginia and be really competitive.
You've already talked a little bit about family connections as Virginia works from behind the cage here, but you think about not only the challenges of leading this UVA program, they have themselves an opportunity here, but she also has a daughter in Kelsey who's playing on the far coast out at Stanford and has been home more often than not of late because of the challenges.
I can only imagine having a daughter in college, especially now, you know, playing lacrosse with COVID, all those challenges that go along with it. It looks like there's a call on the field. I believe it was a horizontal stick from the ECU player.
Going to end up creating another chance for Virginia to really build upon what is already a solid start. We were talking about Coach Meyer. She has to be real pleased with what she's seen from her team thus far.
I think attacking from the opening whistle is exactly what you want, you know, regardless of what team you're on. And, you know, she talked about some of the early success, and that does start with the draw controls, and then it leads to possession. You know, you can't score if you don't have the ball, and so Virginia's done a really good job off the draw, you know, dominating that possession.
There's Hogue again, giving it up over to the far side as Dyson, who was the one to get everything started a moment ago, tries to weave her way through traffic. You mentioned on the East Carolina side of things, Amanda Moore, as she looks on, quite a playing career at North Carolina, and she's not the only member of that staff with ties to the ACC.
Right, you've got an assistant coach who played at Syracuse and then another one who played at Tech who's a recent grad. So I think when you've got coaches like that, it helps motivate your players. It also helps with recruiting.
Hogue gets it in close. She's able to provide the feed, and the finish is there for Mcgovern. First goal, likely not the last of the year for the leading attacker coming back for UVA. There's Ashlyn Mcgovern.
I love watching Mcgovern play. She's so strong and confident in her stick. She finds the cage so well. You know, preseason All-ACC team, there's a reason why she has those accolades.
Received honorable mention as an All-American coming into the year for the work she's done so far. Had 15 goals in that shortened 2020 campaign.
She really flourished last year, and it's unfortunate that the season got, you know, cut short for everybody, but she was really starting to come out of her shell as a leader for Virginia, and so it's great to see her score and kind of maintain that presence.
All right, these two teams were ready to go. They got going maybe earlier than we expected even. They get the first chance to take a break here. What have you seen so far as we get our initial breather in this contest?
I think for Virginia, you know, dominating the draw controls and the possession is exactly what Julie wants. But on the other side of the ball, you know, if you were able to catch that ECU Furman game, the Pirates actually led in draw control 17-14. So I think, you know, they need the ball. They need to get in their possession, their attacking front. And I think that's something that Coach Moore, I'm sure, is talking to them in the timeout right now, that, you know, they need to trend in the right direction, you know, get the ball, get the possession, and let their attack work to take some pressure off the defense.
Let's talk about expectations for Virginia just a little bit. 8 starters returning, 20 players back with actual game experience under their belt. They're picked 4th in a highly regarded ACC, this is a team that is going to rely heavily upon that upper class leadership.
I would agree. I think, you have to look to your veteran leaders who have been there before, not just, playing lacrosse, but there is, the other part of it where you're a student athlete and you're learning to go to school, learning what that feels like to, get on a bus, go to a road game and play, and the next day show up to class. So I think there's a lot of different factors that, come into this when you're a freshman or a sophomore. So looking to those veterans to kind of lead their team and shepherd, Virginia is really going to help them in ACC play.
What a start for UVA. The Wahoos have 4 goals on 4 shots to this point. Hogue, McGovern, Dyson, and Cloak responsible for those. That's economical at best when you talk about 4 goals on 4 shots, all of them on target.
Something that Julie Myers spoke to us earlier, the ability to share the ball, and this is exactly what, she was referring to. You've got a few different Virginia players that are scoring. That makes you lethal on attack when not one girl is your go-to scorer.
So with the 4-0 lead, back to the draw control department. And this time East Carolina able to come away with it. Who are the player or two? Give us an individual or two for East Carolina that you were really keeping an eye on coming into this one.
I was really impressed in the Furman game with Nicole Lagarde, number 17. She sometimes takes the draw, rotates between Kimmel, but she had 8 draw controls in that game, and that's huge on the circle. It's exactly what you want from a player.
Then you look at Pelosi also, who came in with a team-leading 17 goals from 2020 and had 5 goals to lead the way in that contest against Furman. She's certainly quite a player to keep an eye on as well.
East Carolina, they have some players. They've got good ball handlers and they've got good sharpshooters. It's just a matter of getting that possession, helping your defense out. When you get on the possession like they are, not bobbling, not dropping it, Virginia's gonna pressure you out high, being able to have that offensive poise.
First extended run offensively for ECU to try to piece something together as they attempt to answer Virginia's 4 early goals.
You can hear all the communication on the Virginia end, all the defensive communication. They've got great veteran leadership on the D.
And with prolific scorers up and down both these rosters in the attacking game. From the doorstep, able to drive one home. First goal will come from Troniski for the ECU Pirates. It's Troniski who's able to find pay dirt.
Megan Troniski had a goal in the Furman game, 3 assists also. She does a good job. Her teammates set her up for success there on the backside. Virginia wasn't able to slide. She got a right past Charlie Campbell.
Well, and Troniski, you talk about it, setting up those 3 goals, maybe as impressive as the one she was able to piece together. Has been on the young season the distributor for East Carolina, but on this day, she's the first to draw blood for ECU.
And I think similar to the point we made about Virginia, being able to diversify the scores, ECU also does that really well too. And I think, when you're on attack, they did a great job managing the clock. They worked the shot clock, great time management, and they worked for the best shot, not just the first one. And that's impressive to see, especially when, you're down 4 goals. That's your first goal of the game 5 minutes in.
Troniski, you talked about Lagarde. We mentioned Pelosi. Of course, you've got a number of others, Schultes, Barr, Kimmel, who's a player I know you've kept an eye on for more reasons than one along the way. So you said it, a number of different weapons ECU can use. We'll see if they can build upon this, the first goal of the contest. Virginia out to a 4-0 start with goals from Hogue, McGovern, Dyson, and Cloak. And back at it once more, Virginia quickly into attacking position. Working from behind is Morgan Schwab. She's the other of those young freshmen. We talked so much earlier about Hogue, but it's the combo of Hogue, specifically Mackenzie Hogue, and Morgan Schwab that they are really high on in this first-year class. Scooped up, gathered up by Maggie Bostain as Virginia goes back around the horn here. Wahoos with a solid start, now trying to answer an ECU goal for the first time. Right at the face of the goal and just where she needed to be for Ashland Mcgovern. Back-to-back goals for Mcgovern for UVA.
That's a nice goal from Ashlyn Mcgovern. Really pretty lacrosse. Virginia does a good job in that possession, sharing the ball, moving the ball quickly. Everyone has those quick 3-second touches, and that's really hard for the East Carolina defense to track and send that slide. They find the middle. It's a great job.
Well, and you had talked about it when we were off air before the start, that so many different places from which Virginia can score. While that is true, in the absence of Cortland Caskin now, it really falls on the shoulders of the young lady who has scored the last 2 Virginia goals to lead the way.
It does. Losing Cortland Castleman is, so unfortunate. She's a great player, started to have a breakout year last year, and I think the rest of the Virginia players are really going to have to step up, and you can see that they're doing it in the first half. There's 5 goals, different scorers, Ashlyn Mcgovern leading that charge.
Well, you wondered if there was going to be any need to warm up, any rush for Virginia. I mean, they just came back on grounds January 8th. They were practicing in small groups alone, only with the people that you live with, up until about a week ago. It's been a challenge to get back in lacrosse shape for these teams.
I think so. I mean, I can only imagine, this is your first game of the season, having not played in almost 11 months. You have some of those first game jitters with the bobbles and the fouls, but Virginia, they look sharp.
Well, all but one of these having gone Virginia's way on draw control. That remains the case here initially, at least, as the Wahoos have been so good in that department, such a critical area in tone setting matches such as this. As we talked about expectations for Virginia, here comes ECU. This is a team picked 5th in the American Conference. Of course, Florida and Vanderbilt are associate members in women's lacrosse. You know them as SEC powers, but they are expected to set the pace and lead the way in the AAC this year.
I'm convinced there's no easy conference in women's lacrosse. I mean, they got a tough schedule, ECU. They got to play Florida, and they got to play Vanderbilt, and they play a few other ACC teams.
This is a team that had an identical record as Virginia's last year at 5-3 when everything was shut down. Already more wins in that contest, or in that campaign in 2020, than they had in all of 19, and fewer contests to get that done. And here they stand right at the edge. We haven't talked about her yet, but she's right in the heart of your screen once more, and you got to do it. There's Charlie Campbell, the 3-year starter in goal for UVA. She's back in the cage, and all the stability and consistency she provides, it is one of the major storylines for UVA having her back there.
Charlie Campbell is a stud, and she has been for the last few years, really anchoring the Virginia defense.
Number 28, Maggie Bostain.
Provides tremendous value to the team. Bostain working on for UVA. And here comes one of the early tests for Charlie Campbell, just the 1 goal allowed to this point. But an advantageous situation now in effect for ECU.
ECU had the good feed in the middle. They were able to find an open girl, got the foul, good decision to kick it out, work it around the perimeter, work for that best shot, especially when you're playing a team like Virginia. You really got to pick and choose.
ECU having settled things down just a bit from that good pace early that Virginia was able to put together. Again, opting to back completely out. Everything closed off by UVA. We talked about the defensive posture for ECU a little bit earlier, but you're impressed with Virginia's defensive strength as well.
I'm impressed with Virginia's ability to hold them. They got the turnover. That's exactly what you want if you're a defensive unit. But on the flip side, ECU, they used almost all of their possession and were able to maintain those quick passes around the perimeter. That's also really challenging to do.
I talked about East Carolina, the strides they made a year ago. It's a big difference, the number of years that Julie Myers has had to build her program at Virginia versus the new program being established by Amanda Moore and her staff there at ECU. But you are seeing that gradual progress. Even if it was a shortened season, there was incremental movement for the Pirates.
Coach Amanda Moore, I think, has done a great job. She's the first head coach in their program history. She's got a great staff, like we mentioned, helping her lead this team. It's exactly what you want to see. They're trending in the right direction. They just need a few more years.
Yeah, keep in mind, 4th year in program history. So this is the first group of seniors that were recruited, brought in, and have used all their eligibility with your program.
And they're not playing easy teams. There is no easy team anymore in women's lacrosse, and so that's a testament to them, and I give them a lot of kudos and props. Driving here to Virginia and playing a top 20 team. That's exactly what you need if you want to get your program better, and Coach Amanda Moore is definitely on the right track with that.
The patience on display for Virginia once more as they camp out on this end. Under 22 minutes to play, Virginia off to a solid start, under 21 and a half now at a 5-1 advantage. But here is that Virginia patience coming right into your living room there. So a couple of the folks that were able to be involved. It's worth mentioning, thank you fans for joining us here on the ACC Network this afternoon turning evening, because nobody allowed in the venue. That's one of the unusual nature of what we're dealing with now. And with the weather and the movement, there was a capacity at Klockner that could be reached, but here on the practice field, this is the only way to access the action.
The lower turf's a little bit of a different scenario. I'm just happy to be here calling lacrosse, and it's on TV, and you know, that's what we all need.
And we're glad to be your bridge, and certainly pleased that you're with us on this ACC Network broadcast. Good start for Virginia, 5-1, and here they are again. Wahoo's looking to cash in once more.
Looks like ECU at one point had an extra defender. I think they were offside, so UVA will start behind the cage with the ball. Looks like the refs are counting the numbers to make sure they're even.
There's Taylor Reagan getting ready to do something with it for Virginia. On the X back there for UVA. Everything's settled now, and here we go. Wahoo's taking it back in action. Here is Reagan. She's going to find Hogue. Hogue already among those scorers for Virginia, responsible for one of the 5. Mcgovern with a multi-goal performance already. All the other scorers with a single moment to shine so far. Well, looked like it was initially maybe going to be put in there. Instead, the feed provided back to Hogue, and she scores for a second time, joins Mcgovern as a multi-goal scorer in this one. The youngster looking really solid in the early going.
That's a great setup by Annie Dyson. She absolutely could have shot the ball, but she noticed that Hogue was the better shot, and that's what you get when you have veteran leaders on your team. Annie Dyson has played before. She got the assist, gives it to Hogue. That was the better shot, and she recognized that, and that's exactly what you need to bring up some of those younger players and make them feel comfortable in their first year playing.
Yeah, it looked like there for a moment that the Alexandria, Virginia native was going to go ahead and go for the score. But you said it, wisely dumping it off, and here's Hogue once more getting the job done as Virginia sees Kiki Shaw work her way right into the draw control area. Here's the latest of these face-offs, which have been so successful for Virginia to this point, as they have won 6 out of the 7 available to this juncture. Just one of the many statistical categories trending Virginia's way. I think the most remarkable thing you have to look at right now on the stat sheet is every shot has turned into a goal for Virginia to this point.
I'm impressed. This is not what I'm used to seeing in Virginia for a first game. You know, they trend this way after a few games, but they're solid and they're quick and they're concise.
6 for 6 when it comes to taking a look at the cage for Virginia to this point. And UVA making the best of every one of these early opportunities. What are the challenges? And I know you never quite experienced a layoff like this, but you do know the off-season and the preparation. What do you think are the toughest parts of your game to make sure you're able to hone and keep strong when you have the off-season?
I mean, preseason is a grind. You're playing, you know, you're back a month earlier most of the time before all the other students are back, and you're really just playing yourself, and you're often doing 2-a-days or 3-a-days, and it's hard to really see light at the end of the tunnel. But once you get to that first game, you know, you take a deep breath, and you're happy that you play lacrosse, and you remember why you do.
Kiki Shaw took a look there, but nothing doing, and now it's back in her control as she looks for options.
ECU really impressed with the high pressure. You don't usually see that from a team, especially if they're down. They've got almost a faux backer going on where they've got some girl traveling behind the ball.
ETSU strong defensive group looking for the top shelf that time. Shaw very active on this particular possession for Virginia, but was unable to connect that go round. It ends up working out though. Virginia with Mcgovern in the right place, right time once more. Now 7-1 UVA. That's a hat trick already for Mcgovern.
Mcgovern is having a day in the first half. We talked about her earlier before we went on air, and we thought she might have a game, but here she is.
Ashlyn Mcgovern as advertised for UVA, and again, she leads all scorers in this one with the 3 goals. You think about the preseason honors with the honorable mention from an All-American standpoint. You know what she's done in the ACC co-offensive player of the week. You think back to that contest against Navy a year ago, 3rd on the team, 15 goals in that shortened season, but among those who are out there, she was the player you circle, and she's shown me why so far today.
And what I love most about Mcgovern is, you know, she is a goal scorer to her core, but she also does an excellent job of passing the ball and feeding and dodging, and she really does set her teammates up. It's it's not just, her show. She's able to distribute the ball and, have that diversified scoring that Julie Myers was talking about.
She had multiple goals in 5 of Virginia's 8 games in 2020, already having done that in the first of Virginia's performances here today. Under 20 minutes to go in the first half of action. Virginia creating a little breathing room, a little separation. This is similar to what East Carolina ended up doing to Furman in their opener. They had an 8-0 run in the middle stages of the first half that really allowed them to stretch out the advantage before Furman closed it up tight toward the end.
And it's not that ECU's not there. They're really close to those Virginia players. Virginia's just getting that first step, and that's what's making the difference in their ability to have possession and dominate the possession.
ECU led 11-6 at the half and held on the strength of that 8-0 run earlier. It's Virginia here peppering the back of the net to this point, looking for more. What good move to dodge free, but solid defensive effort there to disrupt. That was Cameron Pennypacker, the midfielder, the junior, able to put herself between the Virginia attacker and the goal.
Good defensive pressure, but she got the hold.
Part of that defensive group. You think about it for ECU. We talked a little bit earlier about Blumenthal, the AAC, I should say. Got the AAC and the ACC. Probably not the only time I'll do that today, but the key defender and other defenders of Blumenthal, Jarvis, Cox, Caputo, Bartley, names we'll call throughout, but they are certainly being tested here today. Virginia able to up the total, now by a count of 8-1, the Wahoos lead, and there is Aubry Williams, the latest off a free position shot to make it count for Virginia.
Julie wasn't kidding us when she said that her freshmen were ready to go. It's another freshman with a score. Aubry Williams, great job. She had sticks in her face. It could have been really easy to miss that shot, but she puts it in the back of the net and does a really good job finessing and placing the ball.
All right, I got to ask you now, how many does she have over there that she can plug those holes with and make sure she's able to get some impact play? Aubry Williams, just the latest of this young group to have her name called.
They've got 7 really good freshmen on this Virginia team, and you can see that they're already proving themselves. First game of the season.
Williams, talked about Hogue, we've highlighted Schwab. For all the talk about those 8 returning starters and those 20 with previous collegiate experience, you couple that, kind of bookend it with this young group, it's going to make Virginia very dangerous. Perhaps the expectations even higher than that number 13 in front of their name right now in the national ranking department. Right out of the impact moment.
You'll see Virginia, they're switching up their draw circle girls. You got Aubry Williams, you had Kiki Shaw before. I also am really impressed with number 20 on ECU, Peyton Barr. She did a great job against Furman on the draw control. Again, there's not that much difference between Virginia winning that possession. They're just getting that first step, and ECU really needs to box out, get that ball, get that ground ball. Those are 50-50 balls when they go up in the air, and that's the difference right now when Virginia's outweighing their possessions.
That's a great point. We're just going to say right out of the impact moment, there was Aubry Williams taking the draw control right after finding her first goal in that Virginia uniform. Here she is again.
I think for both teams too, you're trying to find out who your person on the draw is going to be. Who's your specialty person? That is a specialty position, and I think both teams, ECU included, and probably the rest of the, women's lacrosse teams across the country are trying to figure out, who's going to play at X, who's going to be your draw girl so early in the season.
And maybe this year more than ever when you think about how little they've been able to be together as a unit. Virginia with a commanding advantage, and this has kind of been the refrain. It's as if Virginia's camped out right here in this area. They've had opportunity after opportunity with the free position shot, and more often than not, it has paid. It will do so again. Virginia with Lily Cloak now joining the multi-goal scorers on the day.
I mean, this is all you can ask for if you're Coach Julie Myers and the rest of the staff. 8 meters, teams struggle with. It's hard when you're 1v1 basically with the goalie, but Virginia, I think it's their day for their 8 meters.
A couple for Cloak now, a couple for Hogue, of course, the younger Hogue, Mackenzie Hogue. And you talk in terms of the 3 goals, the hat trick that Mcgovern has secured so far. Mcgovern, Hogue, Cloak leading the way as Virginia is in complete command, 9-1. What are you looking for in a season opener like this after the long layoff? What do you think is going to take? Coach Myers about as good as anybody at this point. What do you think it's going to take for her to come away pleased after a day like today?
I think for Julie Myers, she's really hones in on the little things. Obviously, she wants to win the game, but it's important for her to play a complete game, and that means, you know, first and second half.
Now, first half so far so good. Virginia, the draw control scooped up by Hogue this time as she was placed in that spot. One of the host of polls that have been given the opportunity to try their hand at that here in the season opener. Now we get another whistle.
It looks like it might be a bit of a slash. It might be a card on 20 or 9. They're both going to the sub box.
Yeah, down the alley on the far side, both Barr and Stanton were there.
Yeah, it looks like Peyton Barr.
Gonna go against
Get
Barr.
the card.
So contact on the far side, and it will be assessed to the Logan Township, New Jersey native, the sophomore Peyton Barr.
ECU will play man down, but if they score, the card is releasable.
So Virginia able to turn it back the other direction here. East Carolina at a disadvantage for the moment.
Unfortunate turnover if you're ECU. You know, they've struggled to kind of get some momentum. You know, they got a card, they won possession, they're starting to trend down the field in transition, and then they, you know, throw the ball away. I think that's really hard to come back from that when you're already down by 8 goals.
Yeah, these are the moments that you're trying to create some foundation to build on. If you're East Carolina, instead they find their backs against the wall once more with Virginia back at it here. The Wahoos making the best of each of these trips. Shots total up to 12 now, with 9 of those on goal, and of course all 9 of those on goal have found their way in the goal to this point for Virginia. For the longest time, the shot total equaled the goals total. Now 3 more shots for Virginia than the case. I mean, you think about ECU, just the 1 shot to this point, not only just the 1 goal, but just the 1 shot to this point for the Pirates.
It's hard when you're ECU and your team's playing so much defense. Your goalie is getting so many looks.
Yeah, it's been a tough go of it so far. Certainly a difficult day for Ashley Vernon back there, who from, it seems like the very get-go, has been in defensive posture in between the pipes. And here's East Carolina, chance to put something together here now. Crew out of Greenville, North Carolina, on the move. Quickly to Barkley, CC Barkley, a Maryland native. A little closer to home than she is there in the Greenville, North Carolina area where she plays her collegiate lacrosse. Now down to the only goal scorer.
Virginia still pressuring out wide. ECU is really far from the 12-meter. Looks like they're setting up for some sort of play, but it is hard to score when you're by the 30. It's great defensive pressure by Virginia.
And there's Campbell with it. She's controlling. And Campbell, that's probably a name you are familiar with in ACC lore.
Lacrosse fans, if you're watching, I'm sure you recognize the last name. Her mom is the Duke coach for the women's team. She's a great player.
Out of Durham, North Carolina's Cardinal Gibbons High School, where she played her prep, and I'm sure it's been the tutelage of what goes on in the training in her own home that's been as much as anything.
I'm sure there's a lot of lacrosse stuff.
The preparation. But you talked about it. You look at these rosters, you look up and down them. I mean, there are family connections everywhere. It truly is a family sport. Virginia going right back at it once more. Boy, did that materialize quickly. And it's going to be Biscup able to put it in the back of the net. Just the latest of the Virginia Cavaliers to score. Jamie Biscup, the midfielder out of the Empire State. Another Virginia scorer, and she has the double-digit total now for UVA with the 10th goal of the day.
That's a great finish, and if you watched it from the beginning, that really started with good high-pressure defense, and that's why they were able to get that successful transition and put the ball in the back of the net. Julie Myers talked to us earlier. Their defense is where they're really strong. I know it's hard to believe since you've really only seen them on attack, but you know, that possession, that goal started with defense, and that's exactly what you want to see.
Well, Virginia beginning to show all the different ways that they can create. That's just another of them as the lead grows to 9 now. And boy, you think about all the different scorers and how many will there end up being before the day is done. They already have 6 different Wahoos responsible for a goal among the 10 that have been scored to this juncture. And the nod being given to Annie Dyson, who, by the way, was the first to do just that in this contest. is now back out there for the draw control responsibilities. Again, this is an area as you might have expected with the scoreboard being where it is that Virginia has dominated 10-1 to this point. But on cue, there's ECU getting involved by picking one up. Nice job by Frances Kimmel, who we talked about just a moment ago.
Yeah, Kimmel and Barr usually rotate on the draw, so it's nice to see Kimmel back on the draw and get that draw control for her team.
Nearly losing it, but able to scoop it back up there is Carly Johnston, Springfield, Pennsylvania native, getting involved for ECU here. Well, the Pirates doing this a little more often than they were early on, at least pushing down into this attacking portion of the field. Just trying to feed it right in there. Had the positioning they wanted for Ellie Bromley, but could not quite get it to her.
That's a good snipe by Charlie Campbell. I think when you're going against a veteran goalkeeper like that, it's really hard to feed it inside, especially when you have sticks flying everywhere on the defense.
Well, Charlie Campbell being tested a little more here, and now here on the run is Tryniski, who had the lone goal for ECU to this point. Let's talk about Campbell just a little more. Yes, we talked about her being consistent and stable and all the experience, but what is it about her game, just from a logistical standpoint, that allows her to be so successful for UVA?
I think she's really vocal back there on defense. You know, she talks to her defenders a lot. If you've watched a game and, you know, you've been in the stadium, you can hear her from the sidelines. You know, she leads the defense. That's exactly what you want as an anchor.
Got the personality for it, that much
And
is
she
sure.
has the personality for it.
Tested there, able to get a little bit of a deflection, but ECU picks it back up. Here's Kimmel once again to reset.
It's a good second possession for ECU. If you're ECU, you got to feel good about that. Getting the rebound, resetting the shot clock. I think they're finally figuring out that, yes, they can play with Virginia. They're here.
Well, you look at that contest against Furman, we didn't talk about it a great deal, but they were outshot by 6. The caused turnovers, they were -2. When you talk about free position shots, it was 14-6 Furman. In almost all those statistical categories, the Paladins dominated, but ECU still found a way to score enough goals. A lot more difficult to do that against an opponent the caliber of Virginia.
It is, and when they were playing Furman, they led in draw controls, and so I think that's a big part of it too. You know, you win the draw, you have possession, you know, it's goes back to the cat and mouse. You have the ball more than the other team, and so you're able to score more.
+3 in draw controls in that Furman contest for ECU. That you said is the critical area, and it was the one area that they were ahead on the stat sheet when all was said and done. It's controlled by Virginia, as the Wahoos boast a commanding lead. Everything I think it's safe to say going according to plan for Virginia so far in the middle stages of this first period, not only of this contest, but the first period of the year for UVA here at home. Not Klockner, but here at home in Charlottesville.
UVA doing a good job, patient.
Kiki Shaw once again. We've called her name a number of times.
That'll be a shot clock violation on Virginia. That's a big win if you're ECU and your defense. Like, they need to capitalize on this, do something big with it. This could be the momentum shift that they need.
In essence, a forced turnover for ECU, but they end up
giving
it.
Soon.
They end up giving it right back. And here's Shaw coming right down the heart of that ECU defense before there is a collision, and Ellie Bromley goes to the turf.
It'll be another card for ECU.
Remember, we had the card earlier, assist to Peyton Barr.
Kiki Shaw will go to the 12. It's an indirect since she wasn't shooting, so she'll have to pass before she is able to get a shot on cage. Something that ECU struggled with in the Furman game were not only the turnovers, but the fouls, and that really hurts your team when you consistently are down a player, especially on your defense, especially when Virginia is up.
So much Shaw has done today. She had not done that yet, but make her a scorer now. There is Kiki Shaw with her first goal of the contest, and it's now 11-1 Virginia. Boy, Kiki Shaw just all over the field throughout this contest, but now for the first time, she etches her name in that scoring slot.
She's a versatile player. She takes the draw. She's able to be strong in transition, and then she's now able to put a point on the board.
So many different places from whence Virginia can score. That's the one thing that impresses you as you watch this first half, is there are so many areas from which they can find offense.
To me, this team looks completely different than what we saw last year, and even the year before. You know, they had Sammy Mueller, she dominated the possessions and the goal scoring. She was a great player. She's now at Northwestern, but I think, you know, it's time for these other players to step up with the absence of her. And now with the absence of Cortland Caskin, you've got to have some of your younger players find the ball, see the ball, and put the ball in the back of the net.
Seems that call has been answered here in the first half of the opening game. Virginia with a double-digit advantage now. They lead by 10 with 10.5 to go in the first period. Well, obviously a whole lot of lacrosse left in this one. One of the challenges has to be, when things go this well early, being able to stay locked in and make sure the rest of the journey today is what you want it to be from a preparation standpoint.
Right, it's almost a double-edged sword when you're leading, you know, with 10 goals. Now we got running clock. It's hard to not let the wheels fall off in the second half because you know that you're operating from a point of advantage, but, you know, don't expect ECU to sleep in the second half. Like, they're going to come back with a vengeance. You know, they took this bus trip here. This is a game. This counts.
Well, and for Virginia, here's live game action against somebody in a different jersey, during which you can continue to find those combinations that are the mystery heading into 2021. And for just that, there's Whitaker right there on the heart of your screen for a moment or two as play stops. Haven't called Whitaker's name just yet, the midfielder out of Wayne, Pennsylvania, getting a look for UVA here.
We got a 3 seconds on Nicole Lagarde. Can't stand in the 8 meter without guarding somebody. It's a good call by the referee.
Guard camping out just a little bit, and now an opportunity once more for Virginia. Ends up taken by UVA right to the heart. And Jones, the latest of the Virginia players to receive all kind of congratulations from her teammates. It's now 12-1 as Jones puts one in the back of the cage.
It's a good shot by Chloe Jones. You know, she gets into that rotation and, you know, she produces, and that's exactly what you want.
Boy, just continuing to call new Virginia names as scorers across the first 12 goals of the season, and just what the Wahoo faithful were looking for. They're seeing it in the difficult conditions. That's one thing you notice as we take a look at this huddle right now. The rain's still spitting out there, the snow, it's on the perimeter of the facility. Not the most ideal environment in which to play. And yet Virginia is off to a very solid start. Look at the Wahoo huddle. You've been in that huddle a lot. Walk us through the conversation in there at this point.
The huddle is so much better when you're winning and winning by 11 goals. I think, you know, for Julie Myers, I'm sure she's telling her team what we talked about before, you know, don't let the wheels fall off. You still have a whole nother half of a game and 8 minutes left in the first half. You know, keep doing what you're doing, share the ball. And then on the flip side, I'm sure Coach Moore is saying we need to keep pressuring, we need the ball. They have to have possession. East Carolina has to start winning the draws or they're not going to be able to have, you know, opportunities to score and to relieve the pressure of the defense. It's really hard when your defense is playing, you know, 75% of the game. That's hard for them. You've got to give them a break.
Tough to get a break against this attacking group from Virginia. That's going to be something teams are going to have to deal with throughout. You're listening into my broadcast partner, that's Dana Boyle of UVA fame. 14, you said. That's how long you got to go back to. 2014. Now involved in the coaching ranks, the broadcasting ranks, a little bit of everything else. But I think it's high praise when it comes out of your mouth that you say the attacking group you see from this Virginia team, unlike what we've seen in recent years.
Yes, I think it's very different. Speaking to Julie Myers earlier, she told that to me. Not that I didn't believe her, but I was like, I don't know, I haven't seen them play yet. And, you know, she's right. She usually is right.
Well, I heard the high praise she was giving to this young group and thought, okay, everybody's high on the kids they brought in. They recruited them, right? They think they're going to be great. But that wasn't any kind of hyperbole either. This is a solid group of first years already making their presence known here on grounds.
And what I love to see most from a young group of freshmen is that they're actually making their veteran players work a little bit harder, and you can see them bringing out the best in players like Annie Dyson and Ashland Mcgovern. Everybody is working as a cohesive unit, and that's exactly what you want. I mean, that's hard to do in the first game of the season, and they're already doing it.
Well, some of these numbers you might have expected today, but a plus 15 shot advantage for UVA, plus 10 in the on-goal department. They're also 11 out of 14 in terms of draw controls to this point. So the numbers where you would want them to be for UVA in a contest of the non-conference variety like this. You talked about over the years how solidly UVA has been able to start, but then obviously you hit the meat of the ACC schedule. It gets difficult in this conference.
And I think this year is going to be difficult for all teams, you know, regardless of what conference you're in, regardless of who you're playing, every game is a challenge because circumstances are so much different than years past. So I think the ability to be out and play a game, everyone's happy, you don't take it for granted anymore because like we saw last season, it can really come to an abrupt end.
You've talked to a lot of these players. Just getting the work in the offseason has been a real challenge for them in order to stay in competition shape.
It's hard, you know, a lot of coaches had their players stay in groups working out, doing stick work with people that they lived with in terms of COVID protocol, whether it's related to the institution or the state that you're in. So that's hard too when you don't have your team all together. That's the best part of playing a college sport.
Now, good luck trying to build camaraderie with your teammates, especially the new ones that are coming in. You saw Dyson take a look there a moment ago, which sailed well wide, and now Virginia resets it just a bit. Boy, right there, and off balance, able to make the shot. Annie Dyson does find pay dirt this time, drives it home. Didn't work out the last time around, but Dyson, I guess, just needed to be challenged with the off balance look.
That's a great shot. I don't really know how she got that off. She's half falling on the ground, half has her stick back, but she puts it in the back of the net, needless to say.
Dyson, who scored the first goal for UVA, another here, and you talk about multiple goal performances. Dyson, Hogue, Cloak, a pair of goals each, and of course McGovern still leading the way with the hat trick. It's been as advertised for Virginia in the attack.
And a great assist by Williamson from X. That's also really hard to see. You've got an ECU girl flashing her stick in your face, and she does a good job connecting to Annie Dyson.
That's another one of those upper class performers in terms of Williamson, the Richmond, Virginia native. It's up with her first assist on the year. Good job gathering that up, and East Carolina on the pass back to the middle as well, but nothing but white jerseys there to disrupt. It ends up taken away when all is said and done by Williams.
It's a good initial draw control possession by ECU, but Virginia, just more than one player is swarming to the ball. It's really hard for East Carolina to pick their heads up and see their other players because Virginia is just sending not one but two defenders to the ball.
Here's Dyson off the strength and momentum of that score just a moment ago. She will give it up. Goes back behind the cage. And now Virginia with a little bit of a reset out top to Dyson once more. Well, you were discussing the different challenges getting work in. One of the things you just think about the difficulty of preparing your team. How do you prepare for a high contact sport like lacrosse with social distancing in effect? I mean, that gives you the ultimate challenges as those things seem polar opposite of one another.
I can't even imagine. I was talking to Julie earlier and I was like, I don't even know what it's like to be a player or a college student in this type of environment. And I think, you know, Virginia and ECU and all the other teams that are in play right now are just making the best out of every situation and just rolling with the punches. It's the year of the unknown.
You just do what you have to do.
Just do what you have to do to play.
Aubry Williams tried to go top shelf there a moment ago, didn't work out. Eventually ECU takes it away. We were talking about the highly regarded ACC. They're scheduled to line up this way according to the preseason poll. North Carolina, Notre Dame, Syracuse, then Virginia. That's the way the first four line up in the preseason rankings. Of course, preseason rankings probably more of a guess than ever before because the new eligibility rules, everything that comes into effect. You haven't seen a team in 11 months, but based upon where things were in 20, that's the way they line up coming into 21.
I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, UNC, if you watch their game against Stony Brook, they were dominant.
It is what it is.
Dominant last year, and they were dominant the year before, and they're going to be the same this year. You know, the ACC, it's a tough conference.
Amanda Moore can tell you a little bit about that on that East Carolina sideline. She knows a little bit about that Tar Heel Blue. There's the former Tar Heel, now the head coach of this East Carolina squad, which is looking to find a second goal here. Did not take long for East Carolina. Obviously, Virginia had a number in there first, but early in this contest, they were able to secure a goal from Triniski. But since that time, nothing doing.
If you weren't able to see the score at the bottom of the screen, it doesn't look like when ECU gets it to their attack, it doesn't look like they're playing down. Like they're still moving the ball really quickly. they just have those little turnovers that are really crushing them on their attack and their inability to get that consistent flow that you need in offense. But they're playing fast.
Still got the pace you want to see. A little bit of a catch your breath moment for Charlie Campbell there. And speaking of a catch your breath moment, here's one with the ball loose and hard to the turf. Virginia's Chapman able to hop up quickly. Being marked out there by Allie Stanton on your screen for ECU. Just over 3.5 remain in a first half that as it begins to wind down here. Let's talk about reflections before we go into our break of what your takeaways are going to be from this first half of action.
I think if you're Virginia, keep doing what they're doing, keep winning the draw control, possessing the ball, dominating on the attacking front. And if you're ECU, you got to have some firepower under you. You've got to win those draws. Possession is key. You've got to take care of the ball. They've gotten a few opportunities on their attacking end. If they just bobbled it and turned it over, it could be first game jitters, but they're not giving up on the defensive end, and I think that's going to be key for them. Just keep plugging away, one goal at a time.
Not as much as a shot yet from Pelosi, who led the way in that Furman contest, who has been one of their key leaders both in 20 and here in 21. So that's something worth keeping an eye on. Just as we talk about her, Pelosi goes down to the turf here between a couple of Virginia defenders. But Virginia having held her very quiet so far coming off that momentum of that last contest.
If I had to guess, I'm sure Pelosi was a matchup that they had going into the game.
Sure.
And they sent a double to her just before she got fouled. And she's someone that was on the scouting report. I can absolutely guarantee doing a good job of kind of shutting her down, limiting her in terms of touches, and then her ability to kind of find the cage.
You talked about Lagarde, another one of those players that is worth watching. Not a shot from Lagarde at this point. I know so many things she does aside from scoring, but you just look at the players who were able to make an impact in that Furman game offensively. They haven't been able to provide much for ECU just yet.
It's hard when you don't have the ball, and again, we talked about it earlier, but the fouls and the ability, they're disrupting the flow of the game for Virginia, but those fouls are really hard to kind of get in the groove.
The turnover here is Virginia once more. Whitaker giving it up as the Wahoos end up working it around. Just under 2 minutes to play in an opening period that has belonged to Virginia, out shooting ECU 21-2. To this point, with 14 of those 21 on goal. Look like there may be another right there.
Good decision.
Able to back up toward the goal, then spin around and fire it home. Boy, another Virginia goal. Just a tremendous amount of scoring Virginia's been able to do. And wow, what an effort, what a move there for UVA. Talk about Rayleigh among others. I mean, this has just been, it has been an introduce yourself to the Virginia faithful evening to this point, as everybody is getting involved from an attacking standpoint for Virginia.
And that's what you want, especially in the first game of the season. Not often do you get the opportunity to play your bench and go that deep in your bench, but for Virginia, this is going to come in handy when they're in a contest, with an ACC school like a UNC or like a Duke. You've got to have depth in your bench in order to sustain not just a game, but a season long. It's a long season. We got till May. So having some of your younger players get more experience and just feel what it feels like to be on the field during a game day is so crucial.
That was Rayleigh, of course, out of Towson, Maryland, the latest to score for Virginia. And prime lacrosse location when you think of what she grew up in the doorstep of. And Virginia just with 22 shots and now 15 of those on goal, and 14 out of those 15 that have been on goal. Well, they sit on the scoreboard right now as the 14 goals for UVA. Closing seconds of a first half that has been dominated by the 13th ranked team in the country. As they get ready to expire these final 5 seconds or so, I think this is a first half Virginia can reflect upon with all kind of positives to build upon. And that'll bring us to the first half horn. We'll break away, come back with more on the ACC Network on the backside. Second half coming up between ECU and the Virginia Cavaliers. It is all UVA to this point. 14-1 Wahoos at the break. Well, Virginia leading at 14-1 as we get set for second half action. We'll welcome you back to the lower turf practice facility on grounds at UVA. Klockner Stadium, well, the field conditions a little less than desirable, but they're able to get this one in against the Pirates, which is the most important thing. You look back at that first half of action, Dana, 22 shots for Virginia, obviously 14 of them finding the back of the cage. And this may be the most impressive part of the whole thing. 9 different scorers in the first half for the Wahoos.
I think that's exactly what you want to see if you're Coach Julie Myers and the rest of the Virginia coaching staff. The ability to share the ball, especially on the attacking front, is so lethal, especially in the first game. That's not typically what you see from teams. You know, they rely on 1 to 2 players as they get comfortable, learning each other's, mechanisms and, finding the flow. And I think for Virginia, this is a great way to start your season.
Ashlyn Mcgovern, a perfect 3 for 3. She's got the lone hat trick right now. Just talk about her performance so far and what you've seen from the player who has so much of it, as we've talked about, now riding on her shoulders.
I've been so impressed with her, watching her grow as a player and as a leader for Virginia. She can kind of do it all. She's a goal scorer, but she also does a great job of sharing the ball and hooking her teammates up and setting them up for success. And, as a leader, as a veteran player, that's exactly what you need from her.
Dyson, in many ways, bookended the half from a scoring standpoint. She finished strong. She got everything started very nicely for Virginia, and it was just an onslaught of scoring throughout. But you, I know, have been as impressed with this young group for Virginia as anything else we've seen.
I know I'm a UVA alum, but I am an ECU fan. I'm so impressed and appreciative of the fact that, someone like Coach Amanda Moore comes into this program. She's the first head coach, and she's really putting them on the map. Playing really tough competition. That's not easy to go on a road game and play a team like Virginia. I'm impressed. Kudos to them for continuing to stay in this game.
Megan Trenisky able to secure the goal for ECU. It came early in that first half. Nothing else since, and just a couple of shots on goal for ECU. A couple of shots total when you talk about it in terms of a 22-2 advantage for UVA. So some of the numbers they certainly want to see climb. Give us a point of emphasis or two for the Pirates heading into the second half.
I think if you're Coach Amanda Moore and the rest of her staff, in that huddle at halftime, like you talked about, winning the draw first, getting possession and going down on your attacking front and putting the ball in the back of the net. But it all really starts with the draw. You've got to have possession. You've got to have that first step on the circle.
There's Dyson and Barr, our draw control to get the second half underway. Now placed into effect, and East Carolina and Virginia back at it here. Virginia's so strong in this department, 13-3 in draw controls to this point, just to give you another of those kind of key numbers. An area, you said it, ECU was so strong in giving themselves possessions in that contest against Furman, but it's been the challenge you might have expected against UVA here today from a draw control standpoint. And here comes Virginia once more, trying to build upon that sizable halftime lead. Well, we talked about points of emphasis for ECU. What do you think the conversation was like in the Virginia locker room, and what points of emphasis do you see for the home team moving forward?
I think if you're Virginia, you've got to play a complete game, going into ACC play and going into the rest of your season. The first half is over. Now we're focused on the second half. It's anyone's game. It's a new game in the second half. And so I think for Virginia, continuing to dominate on the possession, put the ball in the back of the net, take really smart shots instead of forcing the ball in the back of the net will be some of their keys to success in the second half.
Kiki Shaw right there on the doorstep of the goal, able to take it away from Ashley Vernon to keep possession with Virginia there a moment ago. Then the shot is fired for Virginia, but sails way high. Going to end up scooped up for UVA on the backside. And Wahoos, here's the wraparound. Well, 15th goal for Virginia. Doesn't take long for UVA once more, as here is Reagan now, the latest among those to find pay dirt for Virginia.
That's a great take. She took it all the way from X, Morgan Schwab. You don't typically see a freshman play at X, but Julie Myers said she was going to play at X today. Here she is. She comes all the way from X, all the way around, wraps around the crease, puts the ball in the back of the net.
And she is the other of those youngsters that we focused on in the early going, Mackenzie Hogue, and you called it, Morgan Schwab there, another of those first years. You saw the shot from Reagan a little high, Schwab able to follow up, wrap right around and get the job done. And boy, it just continues to be an underscore of this young group and what they're able to do. You get this kind of production across the course of the season from Schwab and Hogue and company with that upper class leadership. This is a Virginia team maybe even stronger, as we said, than the number in front of their name. And this is scooped up, going to be controlled, well, initially by Dyson, but then handed over to ECU as the Pirates will have one of their first opportunities here this second half in transition. What do you want to see from ECU in these type possessions?
They started off good in that transition. You know, they're switching the fields, which is exactly what you want to shift the Virginia defense, but they just are unable to connect that pass. You can't do those rainbow passes, especially when you're playing a team like Virginia. They've got sticks in the passing lane. You've got to have those hard, crisp passes, confident in your ball handling.
Speaking of hard, crisp passes, there was one. It created a chance for Shaw, but her bounce shot goes a little wide to the left. So Virginia will reset here. Well, that's really contested by that defense, and what a beautiful takeaway. Good work initially by Sam Caputo there, as it will belong to ECU. Maybe one of the better defensive efforts on the entire evening for ECU.
Sam Caputo had a great game against Furman. She's a strong 1v1 defender, and I think that's exactly what you saw in her ability to get the possession.
Caputo, who joins the likes of Liz Blumenthal, who we've talked about, Bartley, Cox, and Jarvis back there, making up that group for ECU that you just have to say that they've been tested from the very beginning here, right from the opening whistle and the initial draw control. It has been Virginia on the attack, and that's what makes these opportunities rare and the need for ECU to cash it all in all the more important. And that's lost just as they were working it down toward the doorstep of the goal.
Initial thought to go down low was the right idea by ECU, but they just can't connect. It's hard when you're down by 14 goals to really feel confident in that pass coming to you. It just makes everything an added layer of difficulty.
And you think when you know how few the chances have been, you put a little more pressure on yourself when you do have an attacking opportunity. So here comes Virginia. Once again,
good job by ECU. Anytime you can force a ball back over the 50, you got to feel good about that. You can see the ECU bench getting a little hype, excited.
Gwen Sinat going to give it off for UVA. Coming up, trying a little bit of a stick check there was Blumenthal. Haven't necessarily called her name a lot other than highlighting her at the start, wearing that jersey number 22 right in the heart of your screen for this ECU squad. They talk about her, the coaching staff, as the individual who is the catalyst for this defense.
She's appeared in all of the games since she was a freshman, so I think she has that experience playing tough opponents and playing in a game. It looks like the ref is gonna...
Yeah, she converged on Hogue pretty quickly there, among others, for ECU.
She'll get the card. ECU down again.
For East Carolina, Nicole Lagarde.
So Lagarde, the midfielder, you said it, situation ECU has been in before already in this contest. They'll find themselves there again. And here's Mackenzie Hogue. Goes high. The anticipation was there, and able to turn away the initial look was Ashley Vernon.
It's a good save by White ECU. They switched goalkeepers.
They did. White out there now. You're exactly right. First save for her. Only one save for Vernon in the first half. So just the second save of the day for ECU.
Not typically what you're used to seeing from Vernon. She had a really good game against Furman. She is a really good goalkeeper, but, you know, switching up the goalie, hopefully it helps with the defensive stop.
Christina White is a senior out of Mount Airy, Maryland, another of those upperclassmen. Both the teams coming in with 14 of them in that most experienced of groups in terms of years. This bounce shot going to sail wide to the right side. So White, much like I'm sure the conversation was when she was getting ready to come out there and replace Vernon, under the same type of assault here in the early part of the second half that Vernon saw throughout in this one. And it will end on this occasion with the latest of the Virginia goals for Ashland Mcgovern. Make it 4 for Mcgovern on the day.
Again, a great job finding Mcgovern. ECU is playing a man down on defense. They did a pretty good job. They stopped him in the middle once, but it's hard when Virginia has that quick ball movement to really stop them the second time, finding the middle.
So Ashland Mcgovern leading the way. She's doubled up the total of Hogue, Dyson, and Cloak. who are the other multi-goal scorers for Virginia. If you weren't with us in the first half, that's where the production has come from. We talked about 9 different scorers through one half of action for UVA. Looking at you during the break and saying, how often do you see that many different players involved from an offensive standpoint? That, you believe, has a potential to be one of the great strengths for Virginia this year.
I definitely do. I think operating from a place where you have so many attacking units, so many people who can distribute the ball but also put the ball in the back of the net really makes you hard to scout and hard to play when you don't really know who your matchup is, because everybody is able to produce on the offensive front.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the challenges for Virginia as they do go back to work here. When you talk in terms of getting ready to line up against the North Carolinas and the Syracuses in the ACC, obviously that attacking group is there. What do you see as the areas of emphasis if Virginia is going to take the next step this season?
I think this year is unique in the fact that they'll play Carolina twice and Tech twice, and that's hard to go Friday, Sunday playing an ACC team. I think for them, you know, continuing to do what they're doing in this first game, it's obviously really early in the season, but they've got to fine-tune some of those bobbles and those passes in the ground balls. They've got to do the 50-50 work on the ground in order to keep that possession and really maintain, you know, the success they're having in this first game with that ACC play.
Yeah, but a great start, and when you got so many places from whence the offense can come, especially as we talked about in the first half, worth revisiting a little bit here, the absence of Kaskin, the absence of so many that they've relied upon along the way over the years. It's a great first sign for Virginia. Back to the attacking position for Virginia once more, and right off the doorstep and able to put it home once more is Cloak. So Cloak, another of those multi-goal scorers, increases her total here.
Lily Cloak, that's a great goal. She just goes hard to goal, regardless of the score, regardless of who they're playing. I've watched her play before. She's excellent, but, you know, just a really hard take to goal around the crease.
Lily Cloak able to put together a hat-trick performance for her alongside the 4 that McGovern has scored. They're responsible for 7 of Virginia's 17 to this point between them. And the shot total now having reached 30 with that goal from Cloak for Virginia. They've been able to put together 30 shots to just the 2 allowed for ECU to this point.
That's tough if you're ECU. Only 2 shots on goal is really hard. They don't have the ball. They haven't been winning it off the possession. Looks like a foul happened on the goal, so Virginia will start with possession.
Virginia with a chance to go on the run here for Knight, and then it comes all the way near side. So effective, the Wahoos, on these type scenarios, and trying it once more. This one turned away. Nice job by White, the new keeper here in the second half.
That was a nice little 2-woman game with the freshman ECU able to come up with the stop. I'm impressed with Morgan Schwab. You know, she's confident with the ball behind X. You know, she created that 2-woman game. It wasn't successful. It didn't connect, but, you know, it's the first game of the season. More to come.
And the main thing, put yourself in that position consistently. You find out that over the long haul, more often than not, it will work out. Here's Blumenthal going to work for ECU. Blumenthal on the run, right down the heart of the Virginia defense.
Putting on the wheels, that's what you need.
Yeah, showing the speed. Blumenthal known so much for her defense.
That's what makes her such a strong player, is that, you know, she operates from a defensive mindset, but she's got good ball handling skills, and that's a perfect example. She brought the ball down safely to ECU's attack. It's giving them an opportunity to have a shot on goal. Showed her versatility. Looked like there might be a window momentarily for Barr, but it closed up quickly. Again, ECU, great ball movement.
Well, shot ends up taken by Stanton, but it sails wide to the left side of the goal. So Barr had an almost look. Stanton takes the look. And the shot numbers, ECU hoping will climb, knowing other positive things may come with it. All the lanes closed up once more. Boy, heavy contact and a straight up takeaway for Virginia.
That's good defense by Knight. Another veteran on the defense for Virginia. Well, captain.
Just going to say, those defenders get lost a little bit in so much offensive prowess that we've seen from Virginia tonight. But you mentioned it, when they get into the deeper portion of the schedule, that defense is going to become even more critical.
Virginia is going to have to rely on their veteran leadership on the defense, and it starts with Charlie Campbell. You know, when they go into ACC play, that's really what's going to be the heart and soul of their team. Playing against tough teams like Carolina and Tech, Duke.
Was scooped up by Stanton. Boy, a couple of times, just a flinch of the wrist by Barr. Looks like she was going to go for it, but just as quickly as it entered her mind, there's a white jersey there to mark her for Virginia. And this has kind of been the situation for ECU.
They were doing so well moving the ball around the perimeter, and it just takes one throwaway like that to really, you know, change the momentum and the shift in the game.
Well, Virginia, everything a little unsettled for ECU, flipping the field quickly. Yeah, those opportunities for ECU, we said that the emphasis on making them count. Just the 3 shots for the Pirates now. And Virginia up over 30 when it comes to the shots total.
But ECU continuing with the high pressure in their defense. They really haven't let up or changed much on their defensive end. You know, forcing Virginia to really look and work hard to find that open girl. But when they do find the open girl, they execute and they put it in the back of the net. And that's really what's made the difference in this game.
Bostain chased that all the way to the far side and cutting right through the middle. A beautiful feed, and the finish was just as true for Virginia's. Jones has another goal. But boy, it was everything that transpired to put her in scoring position that was beautiful on that possession.
That is a pretty goal. It's a great finish. Great finish by the freshman Schwab. Chloe Jones. Got it wrong.
But hey,
we corrected it.
Let's go back and take a look.
There's so many scorers.
You got a lot of scorers on this day. Yeah, mentioned Jones on the goal there. But how about the job that Virginia did as a whole just to create that chance?
Yeah, I think, you know, they're working so many different angles, and Julie Myers talked about it earlier, but their ability to feed not just from X or not just from the top, but from the elbows, and you see it done right there.
Not the first somewhat off-balance shot we've seen today either. I mean, these are a couple of players that, at least in a moment like that, have impressed us with their ability to have net awareness, you might call it, to be able to get the job done, even if they're not in the perfect positioning.
They almost welcome it.
Yes.
We want the challenging shot.
Absolutely. Give me the challenging shot. That's a mark of a team certainly improving and growing. Well, for all the rust you might be expected to see from some of these teams with the long layoffs, it looks almost as if Virginia has relished it and made good use of their prep time.
I think for a first game showing, this is exactly what you want if you're the Virginia staff. And, you know, on the flip side, ECU coming off a game against Furman, that was a running game. You know, that was back and forth, especially in the second half. So it's hard to, you know, play a team and then a few days later play another team, especially like a high-powered team like Virginia.
But you know, for ECU, this is the kind of evening that is really going to prepare them when they get into the meat of their AAC schedule.
Absolutely, and if you're Coach Amanda Moore, this is what you want. You want to play teams like Virginia. It helps your team get better.
Virginia with 18 on the board in search of number 19 here, and just holding on long enough to get the window she was looking for is dial and add another name to the list of scorers for Virginia.
Add it.
Wow. Just a number, and all the stick checks have worked out well today too for UVA. Just so many different areas from which Virginia can receive offense, and Dial trots off to the congratulation of her teammates as it's now 19-1 Virginia.
And the confidence that each of the scorers play with, I think, is something that's also unique. You don't typically see that, especially from some of your younger players, but, you know, if we didn't have the rosters in front of us, it would be really hard to tell who's a veteran, who's a newbie, who's a freshman. You know, they're just playing like they've been there before, and that's, you know, that's pretty lethal in your first game.
What do you mean? It's hard to find a scorer with the pace at which Virginia's scoring and the number of different scores as it is, rosters or no rosters.
And they all have ponytails. It's hard to see.
You're absolutely right. It's just a tremendous showing for Virginia all the way around in terms of all the places from which, and again, how valuable the in-game action for UVA. Here's Mackenzie Hogue taking it away. And as it works on down, Hogue gives it up, and there's Biscup with a second goal on the day.
Virginia just not letting up, continuing to put the pressure on ECU. You know, at what point, you know, do you hold? Do you, move the ball? You know, you have the shot clock, that's been introduced the last, handful of years. So it really is hard for you to stall and or move the ball around. So I think it just forces you to just keep going to goal.
With the feed, Mackenzie Hogue picked up a second assist on the day, alongside of the 2 goals she has, by the way, as well on this, the latest goal scored by Jamie Biskup. And I don't know if there have been too many contests along the way where this many different players this early in a season have been able to get that valuable in-game scoring experience.
I would agree, and I think, one of the things that's working in Virginia's favor is the fact that they've had the possession most of the game, so it's easy for them to kind of find those new scorers, work to find that best shot, what we were talking about earlier, not just like that first transition. They're able to kind of share the ball.
The plus 31 shots advantage tells you a whole bunch of the story, but when you think just in terms of time of offensive possession, as you're alluding to, that really, it speaks to how Virginia has been able to piece this together today. And that trend not going to continue in this very moment, as Campbell does a nice job securing possession for ECU. ECU having won 4 of the draw controls to the 18 that have been secured by UVA prior to that for Kimmel, which was the 5th. And just about every time it looks as if Barr or Pelosi or whoever it might be is going to get in there and have a look. Virginia's closing speed on defense wows you.
They're sending that second slide really early, putting that high pressure on ECU, inhibiting their ability to kind of find that pass or that lane to goal. They've got so many players.
And Pelosi, who we said has been somewhat limited, somewhat quieted throughout. She does have the 1 assist, but does not even have a shot to this point, is going to have a chance to change that right now. She goes 1v1, and Pelosi goes through the wickets in order to get the job done. So it is a second goal for ECU, and the most prolific of their scorers to this point is now in the scorebook.
It's a good shot for Pelosi. Hopefully that helps the momentum for ECU, kind of gets them back on the scoring board. They've got to do some work. They've got 11 minutes left, and Virginia's up by 18, but, game's not over yet.
Pelosi, who led the way with 5 goals, which was 1 shy of a school record in that contest against Furman on Friday. She had a hat trick in the first half and then scored a pair of goals in a 43-second stretch in the second half to put together the 5-goal total as she led this team in their first contest of the season. And it's good to see she can add on to that with her first goal here today. Makes it 20-2 in favor of Virginia, but something to build on for ECU. And when you were talking adjustments coming out of the halftime break, that was really it. You kind of erase the scoreboard from your mind if you're East Carolina, and you work on those progressions for the future of your schedule.
Yeah, second half, new opportunity to not only put the ball in the back of the net, but kind of regroup as a team and figure out, what your goals are for that second half.
You saw Pelosi again there. It looked like she had an extra burst of energy after scoring that goal. You thought she may find a window once more. Here she is again, and an opportunity will come for East Carolina, very similar to what we just saw Pelosi cash in on.
Shooting space on Virginia. Pelosi will get on the 8-meter on that hash.
Pelosi tried the same routine, worked out beautifully. Back-to-back goals for ECU's leading scorer on the year. Give her 7 on the season, and Pelosi makes it 20-3.
It's a good shot, good placement too. Players make plays, and this is a perfect example. ECU needs to put some points on the board. They look to her, she gets the job done. So
Pelosi with 5 against Furman, a couple here, back-to-back multi-goal performances for the ECU attacker, and she has given the bright spot that the Pirate faithful were looking for to the visitors out of Greenville, North Carolina at right around the 10-minute mark here.
In Virginia, they've got a new number in goal, 32 McCarthy. She'll see some time in the second half.
So we've seen a couple of keepers on the ECU side of things. Everything starting off with Ashley Vernon and then working to Christina White. And now for Virginia, the same thing. McCarthy relieving Campbell. What'd you think about Campbell's play in this first one today? Obviously not tested that much, but the few opportunities you had to see her in action, what were your takeaways?
I think if you're a goalie and you get one goal scored against you in the entire 30 minutes, that's a win, and you just take it as a win and you move on to the next game.
Now the 3-year starter certainly performing up to speed in this contest for Virginia, now getting, you would expect, a breather the rest of the way with McCarthy in there. McCarthy continues to be tested, and there's Pelosi in live action for the first time trying to make it work, but a solid turn away here for the Virginia keeper.
That's a good adjustment by McCarthy. That's the third time that Pelosi has shot to that same spot, so she made the adjustment, made the save. ECU will get that possession back, but good job making that adjustment from McCarthy.
They keep the pressure on McCarthy here, and it's Pelosi again, but she's double teamed. That's what we saw the majority of the first half, anytime Pelosi had it in her stick.
And 2 goals back-to-back. Virginia's got to send that second slide early.
Well, ECU, not to be denied, beginning to put some goals together now, and after it was all done by Pelosi initially, ECU able to get another of those players involved. Now, here's a stick check. Everything looking as if it's going to work out okay. But how much do you love what you're seeing from East Carolina right now?
I mean, those goals by Pelosi, that's a momentum shift. You got Kimmel involved in the scoring now. That's exactly what you want. I just think, unfortunately for ECU, they did it a little too late in the second half, but
something to build on for this team
on.
In terms of what you're doing when you come play an ACC school on the road anyway. This squad getting ready for their AAC competition, and now they have a trio of scores. Of course, the initial goal, the only first half goal by Tryniski, now joined with Pelosi's 2 back-to-back and Kimmel's here, and it's 20-4. Another thing happening, obviously, at the same time, shot totals for ECU creeping up toward double digits now, 7 on the board for East Carolina as we dip under 7 minutes to play. So a stretch that the Pirates of East Carolina and head coach Amanda Moore will be able to point to as a snapshot of what they're hoping to do this season.
I mean, we said it in the first half too, you know, if the score was erased, you know, obviously the possession is favoring Virginia, but ECU hasn't given up. They're still pressuring on their defensive end, and you saw them on their attacking front. They're still going to goal and moving the ball quickly, and that's exactly what you want from a team like ECU. They're operating, you know, using that strength that they have and really just getting better.
Pirates with 4 goals, 3 of them coming nearly in succession here in the last several moments, providing an answer in the second half. And one of the things you love about this team, and it's exactly what Dana was alluding to there, the fight they have shown down the stretch in this one. Something for this young staff to build. I mean, you cannot go too deep into this without pointing once more back to the fact that you've got an established, majorly established program in Virginia with a head coach that's had over a quarter of a century on the sideline against a program that's 4 years old and really trying to wade their way into the national landscape.
Right. I like what I see from ECU so early in the history of their program. You know, anytime you've got a relatively new women's lacrosse program, it's awesome for the sport. It grows the game. They'll get there.
Well, as much as the scoring numbers are growing for Virginia, that's a first for Bostain. Add her name to the list of those who have scored for Virginia, and it's a list that's getting hard to keep on one sheet of paper at this point. Bostain with Virginia's 21st goal.
Bostain with a goal. Another freshman that Julie Myers mentioned we might see in the game today, you know, making an impact so early in her career at Virginia.
Maggie Bostain, talk about Mackenzie Hogue. We've highlighted Morgan Schwab at times. I mean, you know, you're already familiar with names like Ashland Mcgovern and on down the line, but you're going to know these names before the year is out because they are making their mark already in not even a full contest for UVA.
It's going to be hard, whoever plays Virginia next, to have to scout them. How do you scout someone, or how do you have a matchup when you have so many different players scoring?
9 different players had scored in the first half of action for Virginia. You look up and down the roster now. I got 12 different scorers for Virginia as 3 newbies have scored here in the second half in terms of UVA. Just a tremendous distribution among the 21 goals. Hey, it's one thing to score 21 goals. It's another thing to distribute them the way the Virginia attack has done.
Right, and I think they'll meet their match. They go to Richmond on Friday, and Richmond, another team who diversifies their attacking front as well. They've got a lot of good scorers.
A little bit of a different story at Robbins Stadium the next time around over there in the state capital of the Commonwealth. 21-4 Virginia. You love the way Virginia did come away with that goal, though, from Bostain, because you have to remember that was the answer for Virginia to the trio of goals that ECU put together. And if there were a few things left to watch for Virginia along the way tonight, it was going to be how would they answer once ECU did some positive things.
Right, it's how you respond. You know, it's all about shifting that momentum. ECU coming off a quick 3 goals. How is Virginia going to respond? They put the ball in the back of the net. That's exactly what you can ask for.
This has worked out a couple of times just like that. Make it 3. Pelosi, identically to the last couple of opportunities that presented themselves like that. And then when you factor in the effort she's put together in the first game for ECU, she now has 8 goals on the year, and give Pelosi a hat trick in this contest.
Pelosi's a good shooter, especially when she gets her hands free like that on the 8 meter is a perfect example to watch her shine. That is where she operates from so much strength. She's shooting stick side on McCarthy, but she's able to find the back of the net and puts 5 goals on the board.
Obviously, Virginia in a different pace now with different personnel now than what you're going to see at the start of a contest. But if you just take the last 10 minutes or so as a snapshot, you have some things to build on if you're East Carolina.
Yeah, you should feel encouraged if you're ECU. Those players they haven't given up. You watch them, you know, that's a draw possession for them. They've continued to fight till the very end of the whistle. They're putting the ball in the back of the net. They've got a little bit of momentum. They've got a little bit of confidence, and you can see it when they're on their attack. They just move differently.
Exactly, closing the numbers up just a little bit in some of those categories. Melton took a look at the goal there. It was not to be, sailed off wide to the right side. We hadn't really framed it in this way, but these are valuable minutes for McCarthy as well to be able to see this type of action, because you never know across the course of a season what you're going to face, what your needs are going to be, and who's going to have to step up. And here's East Carolina able to put another goal in there. ECU, so many different scores in the last few minutes, and here's Pennypacker getting involved.
ECU, you love to see it. They're not giving up. Another goal goes on the board, fighting till the end. That's a testament to their character as a team. You know, a lot of times in this situation, you would see the opposing team shrugging their shoulders and body language, and ECU's hustling back to the draw. They're not giving up, and you know that's a really positive point to grow from as you grow the rest of your season.
And Pennypacker, a player that did not score in that first game against Furman for East Carolina. So here is a new scorer for ECU on the year, the junior out of the state of New Jersey, Clearview Regional, and Mullica Hill, New Jersey for the junior midfielder. And Pennypacker, the latest to score for ECU. Again, something to build on a little further heading into the final minute here as Pelosi has it, or check that, not Pelosi in her stick. That's Barr who comes away with it. Looking for Pelosi coming across the middle there. It ends up being Pennypacker instead. And then back to Barr. Well, you can sense the urgency you need if you're ECU. The delivery ends up in the grasp of McCarthy, and here comes Virginia in the final half-minute plus or so. Well, you reflect upon what we saw in this one as Virginia tries to grab a late goal. Narrow it down to a takeaway or two for me if you can, Dana, with so much activity taking place.
Yeah, I think for Virginia, you know, their ability to have so many different people touch the ball and put the ball in the back of the net will be a strength that they have to operate from the rest of the season. They go and play Richmond, and then they get into ACC play with Virginia Tech and Louisville. ECU, a lot to be encouraged about. You know, they didn't give up in the second half. They'll go to Davidson, Campbell, and then they've got another ACC school in Duke.
Final seconds tick off of a 21-6 victory for Virginia. 35 shots, plus 25 in the shots department for UVA, and a host of different scorers for Virginia, led by McGovern, who ended up with 4 and a hat trick by Cloak. Multi-goal performances also for the likes of Biscup, Jones, Hogue, Dyson. The list goes on and on of those who made their impact. But a solid day all the way around for Virginia, and 21-6 the final. For my broadcast partner, the former Who, Dana Bull, Jason Patterson, for our entire team, saying thanks for watching. This game played a little bit differently time-wise than you might have expected, and down on the lower turf practice field instead of Klockner. But it was our privilege to bring it to you, and we appreciate you hanging with us on the ACC Network. A reminder, you can watch this game as you can all contests that are on ESPN networks by simply downloading the ESPN app. This has been a presentation of ESPN and the ACC Network. Virginia a winner in Charlottesville on President's Day. 21-6 the final over ECU.